Hey, welcome back. Most people think you need a big pile of cash to start a business, but that's not actually true. Um, Years ago, I read a book called The $100 Startup by Chris Guillebeau, and it completely changed how I looked at entrepreneurship. It it's a book that gave me the confidence to stop waiting and to start building, even though I had almost no money. So today I'll share with you how I applied those lessons to start real businesses, and hopefully show you how you can do it as well. So when I initially read this book, what I realized was that what I needed was a mindset shift. And the biggest shift the book gave me was that you don't need perfect skills or perfect timing. You need action. Action is the biggest thing. You don't need millions of dollars. You don't even need thousands. You really just need to find a problem that you can solve, even imperfectly. You don't have to be perfect at it, and just start before you're even ready. And then shortly after, I realized that most of the greats, most of the legendary businessmen and influencers support this concept. Like Mark Ford, the decamillionaire who taught me actually how to arrange a legacy investment portfolio, and the author of a book called Ready, Fire, Aim. He teaches that action creates clarity, not the other way around. Now, his books are all written under the pen name Michael Masterson, in case you're looking for them. And I recommend pretty much anything he writes. I've been following him for many, many years, and outstanding. Napoleon Hill, another legend, author of the incredible book Think and Grow Rich, he writes that action is the real secret. And desire and belief have to be followed by action, even before you're fully certain. Robert Kiyosaki, a name I'm sure you all know, author of Rich Dad Poor Dad, which is said to be the best-selling personal finance book of all time. He teaches that real learning happens through doing, not studying endlessly. You learn by failing and adjusting. Tim Ferriss, the guy who taught us how to automate our lives into a 4-hour work week, says that ready is a lie. He believes that you should test ideas quickly, fail small, iterate fast. Don't overplan. Mark Manson, who wrote that eye-catching book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, has learned that perfectionism is procrastination. Action is what builds confidence and clarity. And my all-time favorite, the ultra-famous Richard Branson of Virgin, is famous for saying, "Screw it, let's do it." He says, jump first, figure it out later, which is pretty much a key to his success with everything he's done. Actually, let me pause to give you a crazy, awesome example of that. If you haven't heard how Richard started the airline Virgin Atlantic, it all started when he was stranded in Puerto Rico because I believe his flight to the British Virgin Islands was canceled. And of course, instead of waiting around and complaining, he decided to take action. He decided to find a private charter. So he chartered a private plane basically on the spot. And to cover the cost, he borrowed a small blackboard at the airport and wrote, $39 one way to BVI, and started selling seats to other stranded passengers. The plane filled up, the idea worked, and as I understand, that was pretty much the light bulb moment for him in his head, where he kind of thought, hey, maybe I should start an airline. And only a few months later, he had leased his first plane and launched Virgin Atlantic, even though he had no experience in aviation whatsoever. What a freaking legend. And in my opinion, probably the ultimate granddaddy example of not waiting to have it all figured out before taking action. And look where that got him. So what the $100 Startup book and all these other superstars have taught me is that success doesn't come from endless planning, which is something that I can get stuck in for hours. It comes from messy, imperfect, real world action. And this was the realization that I needed stop overthinking and to finally do something, finally take action and move forward. So, really the concept that basically any action is good action, right? Thinking about action doesn't count because I've tried that many times and been surprised that I didn't progress anywhere. And I think we have this thing these days where YouTube often convinces us that we're taking action by learning, right? When we endlessly binge videos, just like this one, I guess, but we then just end up stuck telling ourselves that we aren't ready, but not even knowing what it will take to make us ready, and kind of just convincing ourselves that we're learning, we're in a learning phase. So really, I think you've got to read this book, $100 Startup, because there's far more to it than my oversimplification. But when I put it down, I knew that I was ready. I didn't need to wait for some future goal. I could start now, and I did. And one of the first businesses I ever started was an automotive custom shop. And when I started that, I didn't have a fancy shop. I didn't have inventory. I didn't even know everything about vehicles yet. I barely knew anything. I was just kind of an enthusiast, hobbyist even. I was simply passionate about tweaking cars, and I just learned along the way. And actually, the first installs that we did them in the parking garage of my apartment. Like, didn't even have a shop. I would source parts online. I would buy them at a discount, and then install them for customers when they arrived. And I would get paid up front, so I didn't have to put up any cash myself. I just said, hey, this part has to be ordered, please pay up front, and then I would have the money to make the order myself. I just learned as I went, and customers got what they wanted, and I made a profit without going into debt. And then it was, kind of revisiting this book later that also gave me the confidence to start my charter bus company. Now, while that was definitely not a $100 startup, it took a lot to get going. The principle of taking action without having it all figured out was the motivation that I needed to quit a good job and to go out on my own. And I killed it. I had a great time. That business rocked. It was time of my life. So what can you take from this and apply today? One, my advice is not to be afraid to start before you're fully ready, because you'll never be truly ready. Nobody ever really is. Okay, just accept that, and it's going to be a lot easier. Second, if you can find a way to get paid first, do it. Just like I did with my auto custom shop. That'll get you started without investing huge, and it minimizes your risk, right? Third, you want to work to solve real problems, not fantasy problems. Find actual needs and offer simple solutions to your customers or clients. And also, fourth, stay scrappy. Rent, borrow, barter. Don't overinvest before revenue. There's lots of ways to do that, and there's even more options, every single day, with AI and new technology. And I think, bonus tip, start services before products. Not to tell you what to do, but service businesses are usually easier and cheaper to start than product-based businesses. You don't have an inventory, you don't have huge upfront costs like rent or buying products at wholesale. You basically just start with your skills and your time, and I'm sure you can identify some skills that you have that would be valuable towards solving a real world problem. So, in summary, the $100 Startup, was a book that gave me permission to start small, and then all the other greats kind of reinforced that I can figure out things on the move. And this method meant that my business was always just slightly ahead of my experience and learning, so that the problems that I encountered were challenging, but they were never completely beyond my ability to manage, which actually makes me suspicious that waiting until this magical I'm ready point to start a business and then jumping into something huge could possibly set you up for challenges well beyond your scope of experience. I can't help but wonder if maybe there's even greater value in starting now, in the shallow side of the pool and learning as you go, rather than waiting to jump into the deep end only to realize you don't know how to swim. Just remember that you don't need the perfect plan. You need, a customer, a payment, and the courage to just keep keep learning and keep going, right? That's it. It's simple enough, right? So I hope that was as motivating for you as it was for me when I first read the $100 Startup. And I definitely highly recommend the read. It's a simple book with a really great motivation factor. So, what's one small business idea that you've been sitting on? Drop it in the comments. Let's talk about it and how you can start it now. And of course, if you're serious about building something real, hit like, subscribe, and let's grind, hustle, and thrive together. See you on the next one.